Hi, this is Professor Ward, and this is a tutorial on doing truth tables. A number of you have had questions about this topic, and it is one of the tougher topics from the course. So I'm putting together a quick tutorial here for you to walk you through how I do the problems and some hints and tips on how the test is set up in reference to these. So we have a number of basic truth tables. All our other truth tables are built upon these. And the simplest of all is our negation. Negation works on just a single variable. In this case, we'll call it p. And we use this little squiggly called the tilde to indicate not p, which is how I would read this here. So to set up, to begin with, since I only have one variable, I only have two possible options. P could be true, or P could be false. Not P essentially means do the opposite. So here, if P is true, not P is the opposite, or false. Here, P is false, so not P is the opposite, so it's true. Pretty straightforward. The rest of our basic truth tables work on two variables. So here, this is our first one of these, and it's called the conjunction. And we commonly refer to it though as and, because that's going to be the wording in a lot of the in like a story problem. So we have two variables this time. Typically how these truth tables are set up, I want to have all my possible options. So I start with my rightmost variable, q here, and I just say true, false, and I'm going to do this twice because I have two variables. If I had three variables, I would actually do this twice and then double that. And I'll show you why in a minute here. With P, instead of going true, false, because that would give me two sets of exactly the same thing, I'm actually going to do true, true, false, false. If I had a third column, I would do 4 trues and then 4 falses. And essentially it lets me go through and I have every option I had here, true, false, if P is true, and I have every option of Q if P is false. And if I had a third variable, then I would do all of these options if my third variable, let's say R, was true, and all of these options if this variable was false. The tables on the test are going to typically be set up this way, where our rightmost one goes true, false, our next one goes true, true, false, false, and then we'd have 4 trues and 4 falses. If we had a fourth variable, we'd have 8 trues and 8 falses. So our AND operation, our conjunction, essentially says, are both of my input variables true? If they are, then the whole statement is true. If either of them is false, or both of them are false, then my statement is false. So here in my first possible, in my first row, I have P is true and Q is true, so the whole statement is true. In my second one, P is true, but Q is not, so my whole statement is false, because I need both of them to be true. Here, P is false and Q is true, but because P is false, my whole statement is false. And in my last one, both of them are false, so my whole statement is false. Our third table is called our disjunction. And this is more commonly referred to as OR, because again, that's informally what we would use in story problems. OR would be our keyword. So again, I'm going to set my table the same way. True, false, true, false, true, true, false, false. And now, P or Q is true if either of the inputs are true. So here, both in our first row, both P and Q are true, so my whole statement is true. Here in my second one, P is true, so I don't care what Q is. One of them is true and I'm happy. Here, Q is true. I don't care that P is false because one of them is true. In our last one though, both of them are false. Since they're both false, the whole statement is